Hi YouTube, it's me, Susan, and I have done a very unfortunate thing. I just created some video and I ran out of space on my iPad and I deleted the wrong video. So I deleted this entire video that I just did on putting this spine down. But that's okay, I can go through it verbally real quick. So basically, you want to measure the width of your book, and the width of my book it's actually about, I said 9.5, but it's actually about 9 and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5/8. So it's about 9 5/8. And then the width, what you want to do is you want to try to take it to have this overlap, and I said about 1.5 inches, but you can see I ran a little short there, but that's okay. It's going to be covered with paper, so it's really not a huge deal. But I cut that at 5.5, so I figured about a 1.5 inches on either side of the spine for it to overlap. So I cut this at 5.5, and I cut this paper because I keep it real tight on the edges. You can see that. That's like a very small sliver that's visible. And I did cut that. If your book is about the same size as mine, I just took 1/8 off of the size of the width of the book. So whatever the width of the book is, just take off 1/8, and then measure it before you put any tape, down. Make sure that it actually looks good. It's what you want to see. You want to see very little here on the side. You want this to cover nicely. And then I did use good tape on the back of this, because if you don't, this could have an opportunity to not adhere as well as you want it to. So when you start folding your book, it might pucker a little bit. If it does pucker, it's not the end of the world. Just burnish it as well as you can, and then when you put down your binding, you're really not going to see it. As long as it's going to stay there, it's not going anywhere. Don't worry about it too much there. Once you get the paper down, then you want to gently work it in the creases here. You don't want to push too hard down on this, or it will tear the paper. And gently lift the side of your book while you're doing that, and do that to both sides. If you have to flip it, go ahead and flip it, and just gently push down. And then when you're done, you should have something that looks like this. Of course, yours might not be off like mine is, but that's okay. And if it is, it's truly, y'all, it's not a big deal, because when I cover this part, I'm real tight on that as well, so you'll see that. All right, so if you have any questions about that part, let me know, because I apologize for deleting that video. See, even IT people have technical difficulties. And then just, make sure it's burnished well. And then I also said that some people like to burnish the sides of their book, and you just want to be real gentle when you do it. But you can just burnish like this, just on the top of the book, to kind of get a straight, a real clean, straight look on your sides. You don't do it hard, just real gentle, and make sure everything is burnished down well here and here and here before you get stuff in there, because once it's flat right now, so you can make sure that all your paper is nice and adhered. All right, so what I was saying before I deleted the video, and of course I left my pencil in the other room. Let me go grab that real quick. Sometimes it's hard to get this in straight, because you want it to be perfectly in the middle here and perfectly in the middle there. So if you're worried about that, go ahead and use a pencil and just make your marks. I would, if your measurements are as crazy as mine sometimes, just measure both. This ruler has something on here that keeps me from. All right. Just measure both on the width. So this width is actually 2.5. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's actually 2 5/8. And that's because of my little cutter here. The sizes are all messed up, but don't worry about that, because you're basically putting this book together based on your measurements, not necessarily my measurements. So if this is 2 1/2, just make sure it is with your ruler, just like I'm doing, okay? And then you want to see the same thing at the top, right? Make sure that it's the same width. And it's a little bit, yeah, it's about the same there. All right, so if you want to mark it, I mean, go right ahead and do that. And you can use your ruler and mark it. If your spine is 2 1/2 perfectly, you're gonna have a 1/2 inch gusset. So on the front and the back. So that would be like the most important part, I would think. So you would just, well, that's a little weird. Sorry, I don't ever do that. I eyeball it, but the problem with eyeballing it is you'll be paying attention to the top and you'll forget about the bottom, and it could be off. So you just want to make sure that before you actually take all the tape off this and lay it down, that your hinges are straight, right? So you can actually see what is going on, because you don't want your hinges crooked. And this is a little bit crooked because of my tape job on the bottom, but we're going to make it work. You want to look in both places before you actually lay it down. So we're going to go ahead and do that. And you can mark it if you want, you know. Just eyeball it, put it in the middle where you have the same amount of space up here and down here. And then you can just, you know, look at it. And you know that that looks good, so you can put a little mark there, a little mark there. And then look at it down here. Make sure that looks good. Put a little mark there. And my hand's shaking. A little mark there. Alright, so that looks pretty good. So that's exactly a 1/2 inch there, and that's exactly a 1/2 inch there. 1/2 inch, 1/2 inch. So that's going to work really well. So what we want to do now, and you want to use a pencil so you can erase it. You don't want that to show up when you get all your stuff put together. You know, my phone is ringing, and I'm sure it is an IT emergency of some sort. I probably should go check it. We'll give it a few minutes. So I'm on my lunch right now, so I have a couple of minutes on lunch left. That first video that did not turn out, that I deleted, took up a little bit of time. But that's okay. I'm going to try to work on this tonight, too. So eventually here we're going to get to the fun part where we're decorating, putting in our designer paper, putting on our designer paper and embellishing. And once you've done these a couple times, you'll whip right through this part. This part, it really goes quick. It's a little slow when you're waiting on me, but really, it's real quick. So you'll be making up your own books, or you'll be taking existing patterns and changing the dimensions on them. I mean, that is my goal, truly, is to just let you not, I just tell you to not, or show you that you don't have to be afraid if you make a mistake. I have thrown stuff away, trust me, but I love it, so I just keep trying. But really, a lot of things you can fix. So, and you know, you've already seen where I've run into a couple of issues and how we were able to fix them. And I have another issue. Well, it's not an issue. It's just an aesthetic thing that I would, you know, like to fix. So what you want to do is make sure that all your tape is not, you don't want any visible tape here. Okay. No visible tape. Get it out of there, even if you have to cut it, without breaking your... See, this tape is so strong sometimes if it shows, there's not a lot you can do about it. It is done. It is what it is. I'm sure there's some type of a super eraser out there, but I don't know that you can erase it from here, so I think I'm actually going to use this tool. Just want to make sure that there's no shiny glue things that are going to show. Okay. Because those are the things that will bother you. Alright, so I got that off. Alright, so now I'm going to go ahead and lay my paper down, and I got to look at the top and make sure that there's the same amount of space as there is at the bottom. Now if you're putting tags on the top, that's where this is going to change. You're going to probably put this more towards the bottom. But if you don't have tags on the top, then just put it in the middle of your spine. Okay, so I'm just making sure my lines match up with I'm looking at the top and the bottom. You can't see me doing that, but that's what I'm doing. I'm looking at everything. I'm looking at the amount of space between the edges of my spine and how much is showing on my binding piece, just making sure that it looks straight to me. So I'm going to go ahead and put it down. And it will have to work now, because now this is permanent. If it bothers me too much, I'm going to have to redo it. So really, as long as you stop and think about it, because sometimes I don't do that, you know, sometimes I'm crazy and just working 90 to nothing and then realize that, oh, what did I do there? I wasn't paying attention to the bottom. Just trying to save you of that heartache. So just make sure you burnish everything, and you can just put that down like that and burnish like this. Because the more you work these hinges, the more free they're going to allow your pages to move, so that's not a bad thing. Okay. The hinge does seem to be a little bit weird, but as long as it's straight, I can work with it. And they look, to me, they look straight. Okay, I do believe they're straight. All right, so here again, this is a potential for some bulk, some paper to kind of pop up, but we have this taped really well. We have really good tape on there, so it should be okay. If it's too short here, it will have a tendency to come up. So you want to have it a little bit long. You know, I have an inch there. That should be fine, and we're about to see together, but an inch should be fine. But I would just go an inch and a half, okay, on both sides, something like that. All right, so we're going to erase. Yeah, because we did an inch and a half on the binding part. That's right. Okay, so this is about an inch right here. So about an inch is fine. All right, so you just want to gently seam this in. Don't do it too hard, it will rip. All right, and gently fold up the book. And then you're going to notice a little stiffness. And that's okay, because you're going to, when you're working in the book, you're going to be opening and closing it, and it will get to where it's not as stiff. Okay, and just make sure all this is still burnished down. We're going to go to this side. We're going to gently work with that seam there. Gently fold up the page, the book, the cover. All right. Okay. And then you just want to kind of take it and gently give it a squeeze. Work it. Just gently kind of get it. There we go. All right, I'm happy with that for now. All right, so just make sure everything is burnished down well there. Okay. Make sure everything looks okay there. All right, so now what we want to do is we want to cover the insides. And as I said, I do it really tight, and I just tell you, I hope my measurements are somewhat decent here. Okay. So you are probably working with 6.5. So if you're working with 6.5, you only want to cut off 1/8 first and measure it. Okay. So I'm gonna go, because I'm just a little off here. I'm going to go to 6.5, but you're going to go to 6 1 2 3/4. Yeah, 6 3/4 or 3/8. 6 3/8. You're going to go to. And you know, it's better to go bigger than smaller. And you know, please measure for yourself, because if your board is off like mine, you may have some crazy things happening. Alright, so I'm looking at it. Okay, already I see an issue, which is fine. This is good, because this is where you're going to learn here. I think I'm going to take, you're going to measure for yourself, okay? You want that much seam. You see that little tiny seam right there? It is 1/8, or we'll say 1/8, if that. 1/8, right? Just right here on the very tip. You want that same measurement here, 1/8. And then when you're testing, when you're dry fitting this, you do not want it that close to that seam, because when that book folds, it is going to fold with that book. It's not going to look good. So you want to make sure that you come up off that at least by 1/8. See that right there? Right there. You just want to make sure that you are not sitting directly on that seam, because if you are, that paper will fold. So I'm going to go back and fix this a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to take about 1/8 off of one of each side. And I bet we don't even get the covers done before I have to get back, but we'll see. We'll see how it goes. All right. So now I'm coming back, and I am very happy with that. All right. I don't know if you can see that because it's all black, but maybe you can. You can see there's a nice small edge going around, and that is where my chipboard is peeking through, and I'm going to show you how we're going to fix that. Okay, I'm not going to fix it right now. I'm going to go ahead and lay this paper down. So I'm going to cut a second one that's the same size. All right, so I need 3. Measure my length, make sure that I have that exactly right. Okay. Alright. So now I just want to check both sides and make sure that everything looks okay. I am making sure that the bottom is not laying on my fold here, and that I have just a very little bit of my original paper here showing. I'm making sure the same here. So you always, you know, you always want to measure when you're doing custom books, when you're kind of doing them as you go, just always measure. Alright, so I am going to use the good tape just on the edges. This time I'm really going to do that, okay? And then I'm going to use the Xyron glue. This is not an overly high stress point. If you put something heavy on the cover, then you might want to use this good tape all the way, or at least a couple of strips, which we can do that. Because like if you're going to put like a waterfall album or something on the cover, you don't want the weight of that pulling the paper off the book. And that, I've never seen that happen, but I mean, it's possible. You know, and at this point also, I should say, before you actually lay this paper down, I always lay designer paper over it. But if you're not going to do that, if you're just going to go with the cardstock, if you wanted to put anything on the book that you didn't want to show up, like, I don't know, magnets or you know, when you do your hole punches for your charm, you may not want that to be visible. I don't know, whatever. Now would be a good time to do that before you lay this paper down. Otherwise, if you're putting designer paper on top of it like I do, then you can do it before you put your designer paper down. But just something to think about, you know, just think about it, because the worst is when you don't think about it and then you've already done it and you're like, oh, I wish I could have done that. Alright, so I'm just going to put a couple of these just to hold the paper really well. Okay. Sorry if I'm off camera here. I'm trying to look up and pay attention. Yep, I got 2 minutes, but we will just finish this off and then we'll load this video, and then tonight, if all goes well, then we'll work on getting the pages, or whether we're going to put paper on there first or put them on the hinges. See, this is a process video. This is not a tutorial in the sense of this is how you should do it. It's really just a process video so you can see how I do it and how, you know, mistakes do happen, so don't be worried about them. There is a way to cover them. There is, I say cover them, we'll say fix, because we're not putting a shoddy book out there. We just made a mistake and we're going to, you know, fix it. And that's fine. You shouldn't have to throw your whole project in the garbage can or put it to the side and never work on it again. Just get your creative energies flowing and figure out how you can make that work. And I think I'm really excited about the one thing that I was telling you, or I think I told you in my other video, that there's one thing that I'm not happy with aesthetically, that I'm going to show you how I'm going to work through it. I don't want to give it away yet because we're not there yet. But you will see what I mean, and I'll explain to you how I came to that conclusion. So I am just going to use a little bit of this Xyron tape, which is an interesting tape, but I think you'll already know how I feel about that. It has a really wide, see that? That is really wide. It is a 1/2 inch, whereas ATG tape is 1/4 of an inch, right? If I'm not mistaken, I believe that is correct. Yeah, it's about as wide as this. So when you're putting it on your paper and you're putting it on your edges, I don't know. I guess maybe it's because I use an ATG gun all the time, but for some reason I just have, I can't seem to get it on there straight. And this glue is not forgiving. If it gets on your paper, I could not get it off. And like I said, they may have a magic eraser that works, but without that eraser, it's not coming off there. So just an FYI, you'll be trying to figure out what you can do with your edges. All right, so just make sure all your tape is pushed in. Don't want that hanging out there. All right, this is a very, because stuff is going to show, all your edges here are going to show, so make sure all of the glue is off of your edges. And just kind of look at it, make sure you don't see any shiny white. And then we're going to go ahead and put this down. Make a note of where your hinge is. And don't lay it down until you're absolutely ready. Look at all your corners, look at your top, look at your bottom, and then make sure that your sides are straight, and put it down. All right, so that one worked out really well. That one's not sitting on my crease there, so it shouldn't have any problem closing or opening or puckering. Yep, looks good. So you just want to check it, right? Make sure it's not doing anything weird down there. Alright, so for the next one, and just to tell you, and this may be obvious, but to me it wasn't obvious when I first started doing books, so I'm going to tell you. The reason I'm using this stronger tape here is because if paper starts to come up, it comes up on the sides. So this extra strength is going to make sure that it doesn't come up. Okay? It's going to make sure that it all stays down where it's supposed to be. And, you know, every time I do a book, I get a different result, it seems like. So, just want to be prepared for that and go with the flow. Okay, taking all the tape off there. Okay, making sure I don't have any on my edges. Okay, got a little bit hanging off over there. Just going to push it down. Alright, look at it from different angles. Alright, and then I'm looking down, I'm looking at the bottom, the corners, the sides, and the bottom, bottom there. Okay, put it down. Alright, so I'm pretty pleased with that. You're going to see a little seam here, don't worry about that. If you're putting designer paper on there, you're not going to see it. Okay, it's the designer, assuming the designer paper is of a heavy weight, and I'm not talking about the paper that's like the weight of copier paper, because you might see it if you use that paper, but like DCWB or Graphic 45 or Prima or any of those papers that are nice heavy weight, you're not going to see it. So, all right, so that part is done. Okay. So we have our hinge in, we have our sides done, and you just want to make sure you burnish, burnish, burnish. Make sure everything is adhered nicely. And then we're going to fix that when I come back. And I think that's it for now. So I will see you guys after work. Talk to you later. Bye.